So this morning we heard a lot about software and different software players and their software solutions. And now we bring it together in our next panel, which is called Interoperability versus Fragmentation's Lessons Learned from Europe's Charging Networks. And what we want to do is bring together different software but also hardware players and discuss sort of interoperability and mass market issues that we already heard about this morning by the individual keynote speakers. So please welcome on stage with a warm round of applause, Francesca Wahl, Senior Charging Policy Manager at Tesla, Jakob van Zonneveld, CEO and co-founder of Deftpower, Mats Bundgård Harder-Lauridsen, co-founder of BloomCharge and as part of Clever, I guess, and Oliver Adrian, COO and CRO of Chargecloud. Welcome on stage. It's funny for the speakers because they don't hear the music. So you all hear the music, they don't. That's why they are confused. That's why they look confused. I felt the same this morning.
You promised Rammstein.
Yeah, there was a lot of music. It's just, it's on all the headphones.
Cool.
So for everybody coming in, please grab a set of headphones. Otherwise, you won't be able to hear anything. So, hi guys, thanks for joining. Thanks for traveling a long way also from the US. Francesca, particularly highly appreciated. I think some of you just arrived now, so I can't relate back to this morning, but we had a lot of different software players. And what I would like to start with is sort of give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and also what your company does and what your sentiment on interoperability is. So when you think of interoperability, what does it trigger? What's for you sort of the associated challenge, or might there just be no challenge at all associated with it? But this will help the audience sort of to understand also the landscape that we're talking on here today. So Jacob, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my name is Jakob Zonneveld, co-founder CEO of Deftpower. So we have a white label platform for companies that want to be a mobility service provider. So anyone that wants to have charging app, charging card in this market can do this in a cost-efficient way through our platform. And I think these are also the both axes we are building our platform on. On the one hand, you need to increase value for your drivers, for your customers. And the other hand, you also need to decrease the cost as an MSP for yourself. So these are the two axes that we provide our customers. And yeah, customers on our platform are cost efficient, bring a lower charging cost to the driver. And also, more cost efficient. So to have the link with interoperability. So interoperability is actually what this whole market is about. So the starting point for us is I'm an electric car driver, I have an electric car, and I have this battery in my car that needs to charge sometimes electricity because I need to drive it from A to B. Now, I can do this anywhere, maybe at home, at office, public, etc. I need to buy electricity to stay mobile. There's also a second value in this battery that's called flexibility, because the storage capacity, and the first time in the history of the electricity grid, storage capacity is becoming available. So I can earn an income with my battery. Now, both cases between plugging in and plugging out about buying electricity or selling flexibility starts with interoperability. Wherever I plug in, I want to buy electricity because I need to drive. Wherever I plug in, I want to sell flexibility because my car is parked for a long time.
So noted the case of flexibility, interoperability with the energy system. Just making sure, can you all hear us all right? Yeah, that's great. Do you want to continue?
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, my name is Oliver Adrian. I'm the COO and CRO at Chargecloud, day 3, actually super brand new to the company. Chargecloud is one of the leading European providers of software for EV charging businesses. So What we're doing is we enable and empower actually businesses that are in the field of operation of charging infrastructure. So we have a very strong software layer, like the enablement and empowerment layer, but actually we go a step further and we provide also a huge and complex variety of managed services. So really from very small companies to the large enterprises, we take all the burden basically from you and make sure that your EV charging business is running profitable and sustainable.
Thank you so much. Francesca.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. So I lead our global policy team for charging at Tesla. My team is basically looking at all of the opportunities and challenges that can be solved from a regulatory perspective, and working with the business to help ensure that we can continue to deploy our products for customers and provide the best possible customer experience. Tesla, I think most folks know what Tesla is, but at Tesla you can wear many different hats. We are obviously a electric vehicle manufacturer, but we also are looking at the generation side of things with our energy business, and then where I sit is on the charging side. So today I'll speak mostly from the perspective of a CPO. And for us at Tesla, interoperability really has to do with the customer. For us, customer experience is key, right? That's what we pride ourselves on. And so when we look at interoperability, we're looking at it with the lens of what does the customer need in order to have the best possible customer charging experience, and to make it the most seamless. And so a lot of the underlying information that we're looking at is the data that then drives not only how we design the system, right, the actual hardware, but also how we design the sites. Tesla builds its stations to think about peak travel, right? So we design larger sites. We want to have redundancy to create a reliable site. And then it translates all the way into, what does the end user experience look like? Are you using the in-vehicle display and the trip planner and the app together in order to navigate to a site? You can see the availability of that site. And so for us, interoperability spans everything from the design of that site to the hardware to the end customer.
Johanna,
Thank you. Yes?
Because I actually didn't touch on the topic of interoperability, sorry. So I think that's actually a super good point. In the very end, interoperability is a key word to enable customer happiness, right? So that is actually what it's all about. But of course, there's a huge complexity behind what actually interoperability is. And we have software, we have regulations and so on, and we will talk actually about many of those items today, so very happy about that. But in the very end, interoperability needs to be managed and solved, right? And that is then what we do as a company. We actually solve the complexity.
So it's sort of core of your...
Yeah, exactly. So we solve complexity. That is our main USP, I would say, or one of our main USPs. We solve complexity for our customers, and that is there on the software, on the regulatory, on very, very many ends.
Nicely framed.
Thank you.
Mads.
All right, yeah. Nice to meet you all. I represent BloomCharge. We're a carve-out of Clever. We are basically providing the backend system that we've developed for Clever over the years to other CPOs, MSPs now. So basically, in terms of interoperability, you can say we really help other players provide the products they want in terms of roaming alliances, direct roaming agreements, object roaming agreements. We make other players able to build the universe they want towards their customer. And in terms of interoperability, you can say it is all about creating a smooth customer journey. I'm a Tesla driver, so I know how you can get pretty far and how some are very far. But if you look at the rest of the market, paying smoothly without getting out of the car, like Jacob says, actually being able to do flexibility with these huge energy assets that electric cars are, really interesting. Also interesting if we want to keep prices low. Yeah.
So you already sort of alluded to Tesla as first in class, and we already had this also this morning, mentioned that the Tesla customer experience was sort of always, very, very good. So maybe we can start by describing what the ideal customer experience looks like from the role model, and then work backwards from there. Sort of where are we lagging behind, and where are the biggest gaps? But like, what's the target? And focusing here on the customer, because we easily get lost and talk about stuff that has nothing to do with the customer.
Yeah, sure. So when we think about the ideal customer experience, it starts with, when you're in your vehicle and you want to find a charging side. If you're using a public network, right? We're going to talk about this from the public fast charging perspective. Mm-hmm. You want to know that when you get there, the site's available, you can immediately plug in, and you don't have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to do that. And then automatically, you can charge, and it's all done for you at the back end, right? You get your receipt, and you're on your way, right? Like, that is, I think, the kind of ideal that Tesla has been able to build. Why can we do that? Because we're a fully integrated network, right? Our drivers are able to see everything in the vehicle. It's replicated in the app, and then we're able to also send real-time information to route them to other places. And then we have all these key metrics around that. And so if that's sort of the end state, like, how do we make that work across different vehicle models, right? And different charging operators and business models. And I think, we've been able to get there because we're just very maniacal about a customer should never wait, a customer should always be able to charge, and a customer should never have to think about how to do that.
What is there to add from the other perspectives to this ideal customer perspective? Is it just you never wait and you charge and you leave again, or are there things you would add, sort of from your company's perspective? What might be missing in that experience?
I don't want to disappoint you, but I think the Tesla experience is
pretty perfect,
optimal. Because you get in the car, you type in your destination, tells you where to charge. There's always space.
Okay, perfect.
Again, the locations could be sometimes a little bit. I mean, you have to get up 3 minutes.
Amenities, all those things.
Yeah, I was at a golf club the other day. That's true. That's where the Tesla charge. But no, I think Tesla more or less the standards. So the discussion would be how to
get there. Yeah,
it gets there.
I mean, then we agree on this. So then we can move on and say, Tesla, you opened your network as well, right? So if we talk about technical and sort of B2B interoperability and software like kind of solutions, do we have? How was that experience, and how hard is it today? Do we have interoperability issues on sort of the technical side? How far have we gotten with the standardization of protocols and so on? Who wants to start?
Yeah, happy to do so. So I cannot speak for how hard it was for Tesla to open up, but I think like the great experience that we can all agree on that customers are having with Tesla is something that we should strive for or strive to as an industry, right? So I think like that is something that we should definitely look at, but again, that all needs to be managed. We have thousands of different manufacturers or hundreds of different manufacturers of charging hardware. We have a lot of different software stacks. We have different protocols and so on and so on. And actually, I would say we came quite far as an industry. So I think like we can be proud to some extent in the last years. We have agreed on quite a few protocols like OCPP or OCPI. We have seen it yesterday. Also, Hubject is now announced it yesterday. Hubject is now supporting the OCPI protocol on a general global level. Plug and charge is one item that, and from a former FOR experience, really looking at the end customer experience, that is something that our customers loved, just like with Tesla. But again, that needs to be managed in the background quite substantially, and that is again very complex. So we're very happy about standardization coming forward, but at some point, of course, we have to say we also have to agree on standards, right? And again, plug and charge is one item where we believe that there is now a framework existing. that we also rely on, and that shouldn't then be changed in the next years again, right? So we need consistency in our working manner.
And I think actually what is kind of next level is, we mentioned it, flexibility. We've only just started tapping into the flexibility of electric cars. Next, we will see that cars will actually be, some are, but like the majority of cars will be able to discharge to the grid. And if we are to really enable the green transition and keep prices low, we need to get access to this flexibility. And I think there's a long way until we've aligned on how to do that, to be honest.
Yeah. So what you're saying is sort of, it's not just for the charging that works, and you get your large networks, but it's about the price that you can reduce if you then leverage the flexibility of the driver. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
So just so we can sort of make a tick there as well, the fragmentation isn't such a problem anymore for the customer because you have all the solutions and you can integrate everything. But now, I guess, you're leapfrogging the whole way here. It's about integrating into the energy system. So let's start, because there are big problems there, I guess. I know that you guys are very active there, and I think you're also, with some respect, because you're really trying to integrate deeply into electricity networks, also with electricity providers. Maybe you can sketch out a little bit for the audience what the landscape looks like and what sort of the challenge is when you want to leverage customer flexibility to decrease charging prices.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that might look complex, but I don't think it's so much complex actually. So first I'd like to paint the picture. So where's the value? So you have this battery, that's the asset that's interesting to do flexibility, right? Now who buys flexibility? There are actually two buyers of electricity. Could be the energy market, so the energy supplies, that's where the electricity price gets decided. The intraday market, for example. The other buyer are the grid operators. They have a different problem. They need to make sure the grid is in balance, or they manage congestion, etc. So these are two possible buyers that would pay for charging differently than would happen if you don't interfere with the charging session. Now, how do you get this flexibility into a charging session? Actually, from a vehicle or EV driver point of view, you have three possible, let's call it customers. Could be through the charge point operator, because they have the energy contract. So you could work through them to exchange flexibility, to make a trade. You could also go directly to the energy supplier, because they supply the charge point operators. And if they can optimize their portfolio, they can deliver a better price to the charge point operator, etc. And that's how the value chain is there. Or you go directly to the grid operator, who can buy the flexibility from, in this case, the driver. Now, none of these players necessarily has access to thousands or even millions of electric cars. So how do you need this? You need to aggregate. That's the role then of the mobility service provider, because they have access to thousands or millions of cars. And they actually then make this a kind of virtual power plant. But to get it straight, the mobility service provider would never be the trading guy, but they would be the gatekeeper. So if you want a flexibility from this battery, you can pay and you get your flex. So that's the role we foresee. From interoperability point of view, how is this solved? The market standard here is OCPI already. It works in here. ISO 15118 plug and charge come, it also works in there. So the market is already more or less moving around these two protocols. There's more to solve that's not in these protocols yet, but maybe you follow up
We'll
question.
get there. From your point of view, sort of integration into the grid, where are your different companies sort of, where are you with regards to leveraging flexibility, and where do you see the biggest challenges?
Yeah, so again, we are enabling, we are a B2B business, right? So we are enabling our customers, our partners. In the energy area, that is something where you have different levels, right? So at the very beginning, this is load management and the entire topic about smart charging. So that's not really well defined what that actually means, but there are different use cases basically in the smart charging area. That is where we are, of course, tapping in, right? In the very end, when it comes to selling flexibility, again, that is very early stage, right? And as a mass market provider, basically, we have to very carefully look at how far is the industry actually, because we really want to be strong when the market is there. So we're very carefully evaluating
observing,
lots of conversation and collaborate, obviously, with very strong partners. We also have a very strong marketplace actually, where we exactly work together with those companies and find here the right spot. But currently, basically, this is something where we provide solutions or tap into solutions at the very beginning, and then see how far we integrate over time.
I want to know from you, Francesca, from a Tesla perspective, you're already looking at your utilization and changing prices depending on utilization. That's the first step towards sort of managing when people come to charge. When we think about flexibility, public charging isn't the first use case we all have in mind. We all think about home charging, and there are the cars standing around for 23 hours. Well, all great. But how do we conceptualize this flexibility, leveraging flexibility at public charge points?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think from our perspective, we first thought about it only in the context of sending price signals to the customer. To encourage, off-peak charging or at times where, and it's actually based not necessarily always in line with what's happening from a grid perspective, but sometimes based on congestion, right? It's actually more of a congestion-based tool to make sure that, if it's really busy in the afternoon, you can get utilization spread across and not just have customers waiting. We have a data point at Tesla that's anything that's over 10 minutes is considered a waiter, and we want to have less than 1% of sessions across the entire world be waiting, and we try to hit that metric pretty specifically. So I think on the public charging side for us, it's really how do we continue to allow customers to charge whenever they want while playing around the edges. And then, we obviously have a very large energy business. And so we actually are thinking about it more on the V2X side in the context of residential customers as well. So, the ideal customer has rooftop solar, they have a battery, they have the vehicle, they have the charger. And how do you start to optimize that system? And I think from that perspective, for interoperability, in early days now, we want to make sure that we can start we don't want to be like be the enemy of the good, I think is a way to frame it, which is that we want to start piloting these things now rather than waiting for the perfect framework to come around. And so in that context, eventually I think you want to have every charger and every vehicle be able to connect no matter where you are and offer those services. But in the interim, if that's not possible, what can we do on a smaller scale, right, with customers and their products? And then how do we grow that?
So before I follow up on the home charging, any other opinions on the flexibility at public charging sites?
Yeah, I think in terms of flexibility, we are really far as a company, and in Denmark we operate on all markets basically. And are working actually really hard on the next level. And I think it depends a little bit on your business model, right? Because if you look at, you say our main customer, Clever, lots of public charging points, not only the high power fast charging points, but a lot of B2B charge points, which are also open. So cars are coming now, and we see a possibility that you always plug in. You just got to teach customers always to plug in. So you might be at work. Often in Denmark, electricity prices all summer are basically zero from 12 to 5. So why not charge your car there? You come home 5, 6 o'clock, and you might discharge maybe 10 kilowatt hours or whatever at the peak period. And basically you can decrease your energy cost by like significant amounts, basically paying the cost of charging your car, right? So there's really a huge potential in that. Some of the issues right now, interoperability-wise, are of course that to get access to car telemetrics so that you can actually do this accurately is one of the like really big pain points, right? To really speed this up right now.
Who is your main counterpart there? Who has to sort of help you with the access to the car data? Is it the OEMs?
Yeah, I think it is the OEMs. It's a little bit of a game going on right now because who's going to earn money on this? Is it an OEM with an energy business, or is it players like Clever who has come out of nothing and created a charge point business? So it's a little bit a game right now. So we need a bit more openness, you can say, to actually get this value out there from the cars mainly.
Jacob, for you guys, is it also the home charging or at a site where you're parked for longer? That's the most relevant case where you sort of aim to unlock the flexibility, or do you also have projects where you're working on public charging sites?
So we don't both. For us, conceptually, this doesn't matter. It's a different road to both locations. It's a different business, a way to orchestrate it. But first principle is you can charge your car at home, but also in public.
Yeah.
So most drivers have 4 charge point locations per month on average. Some people charge exclusively at home, some people charge never at home. So it's a bit different. At home it's a bit easier because the owner of the car is the owner of the house, of the energy contract, of the charging point, etc. So one person to do business with. In public, you have a public charge point operator that has a deal with the city, etc. So there are more stakeholders to get this pulled off, and that's also where this interoperability comes in. It's more complicated, so you need to increase the amount of information you share and the agreements you make, and this per charge point operator or per location. But fundamentally, it shouldn't matter if you smart charge or use flexibility at home or at public. The energy system doesn't make this distinction.
Yeah, nevertheless, I find it very interesting because when we think about flexibility at home, then most of the time you have a very close integration of the person who's buying the electricity and then building the product for the end consumer. And I wonder very much, you're an EMSP, you're not the CPO. The CPO is responsible for the procurement of the electricity.
Yeah.
And the sort of revenue you can make or the benefit you can generate for the customer is very closely related to the procurement of the electricity. So how do you bridge that gap?
So we have customers that have home chargers. We work utilities, leasing companies, fleet companies, etc. They install home chargers, primarily actually to manage the reimbursement for fleet cars, but could also be for consumers. Just somebody has a private parking space at home, needs to have a charging station. Those customers are MSP on our platform, and they want this charging app to work in public and at home. Mm-hmm. So they already unify this like naturally or organically in a way. We also have MSPs that started public off, but they ask the drivers through the app to add their charging station and add their energy contracts in the app.
Yeah.
If we have this information, we can also steer at home. So we also steer charging sessions where the energy supplier could be Tibber or Octopus, for example.
Yeah.
So that it becomes very interesting actually here. This is mixing up.
Can I add a point?
Please.
Because we haven't really mentioned policy. So
policy
person. I do think one thing that's, when we talk about flexibility or interoperability, policy does play a big role, because at the end of the day, if we have all these products, but there's no way for the network codes to allow you to interconnect to the system or actually create like the markets that allow you to benefit as a customer, you can't really utilize it, right? And so I think one of the harder challenges is also figuring out how to translate these protocols and things into policy that actually makes sense and is consistent, because you don't want to go to 27 different countries and have to integrate a slightly different way using a slightly different regulatory scheme. And so driving some level of standardization around that in order to enable these software and hardware to work together and be used is going to be really key.
You would be lucky if it's only 20.
Oh yeah, well, yeah.
800 million grid operators
exactly.
in Germany alone.
Add that onto it, right?
Do you guys have, from sort of outside of Germany, any first-in-class policy measures that you think, or countries where it works really well? Also, looking into the Nordics, looking into the US, what can we learn? Because in Germany, we're like putting sticks into our bicycle, and we're stumbling along. What are good examples where the integration, where the interoperability with the electricity sector, energy sector is working well?
Yeah, so I think like we made huge progress with the AFIR and the delegated acts. So not everyone was happy about every single aspect, but that's all good. But in the end, and we talked about it, it's you want a great customer experience, and as a business you want guidelines and guide rails, but you also don't want over-regulation, right?
Yeah.
You want still to have the freedom for innovation and providing actually great experience. And it's actually not the role of, at least I don't perceive it this way, it's actually not the role of policymakers to define the perfect customer experience, right? That is up to us as businesses. And I do think we're doing actually a great job as an industry. However, it's not always that easy, right? And the devil lies in the details here. When we're looking at the regulation for now providing POIs via national access points, that is something, where I would question actually, was that now the best way to solve it? And is it really helping the customer in the very end? There are different regulatory frameworks for invoicing, for example, in different markets in Europe. There are different frameworks for accessibility. Really important items for the customer in the very end, right? So it's really a fine line where regulation should set standard and where actually regulations should step out of the market and let actually the industry solve it to really then aim for the best customer experience.
I think what we do a lot actually in the Nordics is we do exemptions, also regulatory. So you let a company do a thing for a period to test things. And I think that's something that I don't see happening that much in Germany. Because, if you can show it works, it's often easier to actually also get the regulatory stuff through afterwards, right? So
I think that in Germany we have like two different, we have like one thing that is like allowing for exceptions, but not in a temporary way, but like a bit too long maybe, and then it's hard to roll back. And then you have a patchwork, and then we also have instruments for trying things out. But I think right now, especially when you look into the integration into the energy system, Germany is sometimes not helping itself. There was a panel on bidirectional charging just before lunch, and we talked about that a little bit. So I think there are some examples in other countries where we can really benefit from. Moving on, sort of coming back to the customer experience. So we said interoperability on a technical side, that's okay. Like we can do it. We can open up networks. We can cover all of Europe. We can charge at home and leverage cheaper electricity prices. So envisioning sort of, or going a few years into the future, what do you think will the charging experience be like? You said already integrating home and public. Like what is it going to feel like? What is it going to look like? Do I pay the same everywhere? Do I have some kind of flat rate? How do you guys envision this goal that everybody is providing all the flexibility and benefiting a lot and has a very smooth experience?
Well, we see different cool things that could happen, right? So a lot of people are getting PVs on the roofs. And why not create ways where you cannot always use your solar electricity. Why not create a way where you can actually store it somehow, and you can drive to another country, charge somewhere, and actually use that power. So there are lots of interesting business models that we have to see now, right?
Yeah.
And that's just one, right?
Do you think that that other customers are going to be happy to care so much about it and know so much about how the system works? Or how do you get the complexity down?
Yeah, I think really cost has to follow. So there has to be a price element, right? It has to be because you really feel like you are earning something out of this. It cannot just be your green heart for sure. But I think as soon as we talk flexibility, energy, there is a lot of value to unlock. So I think the money is there really to create this behavior.
Yeah, regarding business model, it depends a bit where do you put the gains in the value chain and where do you add the risk. So from a consumer point of view, actually I wouldn't mind if you say like you get market price is 10, but you could only pay 5. You always get 50%. Let's say if you always have free energy, but I control your assets 100% of the time. So you have no security anymore, etc. But you have free energy. Then I make the money, of course. With the flexibility, you have your free energy. But maybe that's a little bit. Maybe the
we have these. We see some of these offers coming online, right? So.
Indeed. So this is the extreme variant, but it should be somewhere in between. Like the more control there is on the asset by the traders, the more money they make. The more money they make, the lower your electricity bill. But it's always the balance between how much control do I want to keep or how much complexity do I want to manage versus how much, what the cost should be.
I wonder, so a stationary asset you can put into full control of the trader or electricity aggregator and so on.
Yeah.
But how do you get the behavior under control? Because you need the customer also to obviously provide the flexibility, and I have some mobility needs as well. So how do you strike, also from your experience, how do I strike the right balance, and how good are customers in providing flexibility? I just want a quick anecdote. I heard from the Federal Network Agency 2 months ago, someone who's responsible also for this process of rewriting the rules, how we price network fees. He said the flexibility, they all say it's there, but it's not there. So I wonder, like, is it?
Yeah, that's a different word for a lie. This word, because the flexibility. I mean, if there's 6 million cars times 70 kilowatt-hour capacity, that's a lot of flexibility. What they mean is we don't have access to the flexibility because we don't know how to get there. One way to get access to flexibility is to come with time of use tariffs, because then you give market players and incentives to consume or not to consume.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we actually doing? In the old days, we produce energy and we, at demand, of course, and we adjusted the production to the demand. It was super easy. So you increase a bit the gas, decrease, or the coal, or whatever, or the nuclear. Very simple model. Now there's all this production means like windmills and solar, which you don't dictate. You can't decide when the sun shines or when the sun shines, you know when it doesn't. But so it's fluctuating when the supply is there. So instead of adjusting supply to demand, you adjust demand to supply. And the better you do this, the more you're in sync with the reality, the lower the electricity price. And cleaner, by the way, but maybe less relevant. It's very relevant. But yeah, that's how it should be mixed. So back to the question, where's the risk and the business model? If you have assets and you are, as a consumer, you're comfortable with giving this away to somebody else, your price drops. The more you stay in control, the more
higher
you
also
pay. It's a convenience thing, I guess, from that point of view.
The other piece that I think is interesting, if you're thinking about the future, is also how autonomy will play into this. So I don't think we want to broach that subject right now, but if you think about a future autonomous world where vehicles are driving themselves, right? What does that do to the charging model and experience? Because it fundamentally changes how vehicles are being used, whether that's in a fleet individually. So, I don't have a good answer or kind of thought on that beyond the sense that I think it's going to have a pretty strong impact in terms of how do we kind of like integrate with that. And also gives us the opportunity to maybe utilize an asset that sits around all the time a lot more, right?
Yeah.
If you have a vehicle that can sort of take itself from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Tesla is like one step ahead, once more.
And I think it's super interesting to actually look 3 years into the future, but we should not forget that there are actually, from a customer experience, again, we have quite a few issues that we have to solve still as of today, right? And here especially, and you talked about it when it comes to pricing, and we have lots of discussions about EMP pricing and ad hoc pricing and so on and so on. We as Chargecloud, we operate in many countries in Europe, and of course we enable our customers to be flexible and to have a great own pricing strategy and so on. But when it comes to the entire discussion around EMP pricing and subscription models and versus ad hoc charging and so on, I think that is super, because that is actually a real pain point, and that drives customer behavior for many customers. And that is not solved yet, right? Like that is still an open question. And we actually, while there are really many good arguments for ad hoc charging and no subscriptions, we do see that lots of customers on the EMP side actually want to have the certainty about the prices, right? So, and that is something like when we talk about customer experience and interoperability, 3 years ahead is great, but there are really like items to solve that we have today as an industry, right?
Yeah, I think it's
a very good point, because actually this is the same discussion, because where is the convenience, the price? So this ad hoc charging solves a big problem. It's the access or the convenience, you use your credit card. But ad hoc pricing will always be the highest kilowatt hour price, because there's no other value exchange between driver, consumer, car, grid. There's no flexibility involved. So convenience, yes. Cost, no. So
you will pay for this.
Ad hoc charging is the most expensive way of charging. Yeah.
Do you sort of, when you look at the transparency, do you think sort of that's the price that customers also pay for everything being sort of technically interoperable, and all sort of all the networks are accessible with one charging card, but in the end you have this price in transparency that the customer has to deal with, and that is still sort of not a very customer-centric model?
I think like customers shouldn't pay for anything, right? So in the very end, customers, they want energy, period, and they don't want the entire complex system with all of us actually in the background, right? That is not what the customer cares about, and that is completely fine. But of course, this is not how it works, right? So I do think that we do play a very vital role for the customer. We as Chargecloud, we enable other companies to provide a great service to the customer. And of course, there's a price to it. Obviously, we try to keep it as low as possible for our customers, so that they basically have a margin and they provide then their very service to the customer. In the end, the price should be as low as possible. But the customer, just in many other sectors, may it be the telecommunications sector or credit cards and so on, of course, there is a service behind it, and technical and legal and business layers, and that is of course something that the customer has to pay for it, but it should not be as extensive as we had it maybe in the past.
How do we get it down?
I think there's a lot of discussion about what is the price for kilowatt hour, how do I find out. I think the frustration, or maybe I'm wrong, but this would be my frustration. The problem is not so much like what's the price. So you can say at every AC charging station, so this is the price. So you arrive and you see, okay, this is the price. Well, fine. But what the real pain is that you have different options. You can buy the same kilowatt hour for 20 cents here, 79 cents there. So what does that do to me? I feel ripped off if I get at the wrong price. So that's more the problem. I think from consumer point of view, you want to say, how do you ensure they don't feel ripped off?
Yeah. So we've touched upon this point several times this morning, and it feels like, as you guys also said when we talked 2 weeks back, is that the interoperability on the technical side is sort of we're far along the way, but people have to pay for it. And so far, I haven't heard any clear message on how to sort of reduce the price for ad hoc charging that doesn't come with the like if you then move into home charging grids flexibility, obviously you have a big leverage, but for this sole sort of public charging.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's the underlying cost stack, right? So you have to tackle the underlying cost, and so one thing you could tackle is the underlying cost of electricity, right? Can you design more specific tariffs underlying for public charging stations, because you have peaky loads, and so before utilization is at higher levels, right, you are getting charged often higher amounts. And so I think it's looking at sort of the full value or the full cost stack and trying to figure out, okay, where else can you drive down that then gets passed on to the end customer. And that could be in the form of like what we're doing, right? Some price signaling that we get that we can pass on to the customer or vice versa. Just something that we get, we can internalize and figure out how to do. And then in order to be able to reduce driver costs as well.
I have one more question here about the interoperability of the charging ecosystem with the energy sector. So in an integrated company like Tesla, you have people who buy and sell electricity, and you have your CPO business, and you have obviously the people who build cars. How closely, like it's within a company, and for all other companies, this has to be like between utilities and the charge point operator. How hard is it to get this integration between the electricity trading side and the people who are building the charge point operator tariffs, etc.?
I think it takes time and education and work in order to be able to do it, but I think there is a way to do it. I mean, there's also, other ways of looking at this, which is, if you can't work on the grid side, maybe you think about large-scale battery solutions too, right? At public fast charging, and you try to find ways to supplement from that perspective, which is something, Tesla has a big product called the Megapack, large-scale storage. So sometimes you see us deploy it, and it has chargers on it, because we want to make sure that, we are able to get that power on site when we need it. But I don't think it's, it's not impossible, but it does take time and energy in order to make those connections.
Thank you. Any other arguments here? So I would like to open up the panel discussion to the audience and ask for questions from the audience. So please raise your hand or provide them via the app. We get them here. I get them on the iPad, so I can read them out right away. But we also have some mics in the room. And while I give you time to think about your questions, I'd like to sort of give you the final round. So if there's like one rule standard that you could scrap, where we could start from scratch, start new, and it can be within the sort of core e-mobility ecosystem or in the larger ecosystem, what would it be? What would be the one thing where you think it would be great if we could start from anew?
It's a good question, but actually, I don't know. I like how things are going, to be honest. If there's one thing that would change, I mean, I'm sorry, it's about interoperability, and traditionally it's about access, but I'm going to move to flexibility again.
That's fine.
So it's often illegal to sell flexibility for those who possess the flexibility. So you're being made a little bit a drug abuser if you sell flexibility, though, but it helps the system, it helps society. So it's not about regulation here, it's about deregulation and provide more access to those who possess the flexibility, who harvest it or sow it, harvest and sell it. Like
so it's really about integration into the energy system. Absolutely fine, I said. Mats.
I think it's not a rule we need to scrap, but I think we need to find a way for OEMs, for cars to open up their data, for energy companies, for companies like us to be able to really work with flexibility and good products. So I think it's more like we need the cars really to start to open up more.
Do you have any good examples for initiatives or movements that are
There are plenty of movements also on EU levels to work with this in terms of V2X and so on, where car telemetrics are just required. I don't have a specific legislation, but
I would double click on what Jacob said, actually, because I think things are going quite well, right? And for us as a company, I think consistency from a regulatory perspective is super important. And if we could stay with OCPI, OCPP, the plug-and-charge ecosystem that is existing now, and so on, I guess we would be super happy, because that really enables consistency on the tech side, on the software side, and that reduces costs. Every change is increasing costs on all ends, not on ours only, but on all ends, and that is what we do not want because in the end someone has to pay for it, and very often it is a customer, right? And we don't want that. We want costs to be low, and so I wouldn't change anything. Would
Great.
leave it as it is, but let's stay with what we're having. Innovate where we can, but let's keep the costs low and
keep
let's go with
the playing field as it is. Francesca?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer to this one because at Tesla we fundamentally tend to do the opposite. You know, we kind of do our own thing and then we come into, when things have already progressed, we kind of come into it as well. But I would say continuing to also challenge what is in place and see if we can do it better. Yeah. Right? Like just because a standard has been created, like we want to continue to iterate on it and see if we continue to make it better with the customer in mind. So maybe that's a better way of framing it. It's like we've learned a lot of what not to do, so maybe like build on that going forward on the existing framework.
It's very good answers. As I said, there's certain things that we sort of are done with, or we have made progress, and now it's good, and now we have to keep it. So going back to the questions, any questions from the audience? There's a question in the back there. Hi.
Hello, thank you. I wanted to ask, especially for Tesla, but what about those CPI protocol implementation? I know you had a closed network many years. I know recently you joined the foundation of OCPI as a member, and I'm wondering, are you open to put your chargers on the hub and make it available for all the drivers and the other way around? Are you supporting the open source or the protocols for plug-in charge so that it works interoperably from Tesla to all the chargers and from the custom chargers to the Tesla cars? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I think just big picture, yes, we want to be able to integrate and utilize things both ways. So the team is working on those types of initiatives. I think OCPI is actually something that we have been very vocal on that we do think is a good framework from a data exchange piece. Like I think from a standardization side of things. So I can't share too much more, but we are, I think, trying to make sure that the things go both ways, as you expressed it, to be able to provide the benefits to Tesla and non-Tesla as well.
Does that answer the question? Not yet, so you follow up afterwards. Any more questions from the audience? I have a question here online. So the question is, why is ad hoc pricing working in, for example, Denmark, but not in Germany? And who has insights into the showstoppers for fair transparency in the German market? Too much European expertise or global? Yeah, well, it's about the showstoppers for price transparency for ad hoc pricing in Germany.
In Germany.
You look German too.
Any I think like I know where the audience who can answer the question.
Yeah, I think I know where the question is coming from when I look here into this direction, and that is all good. I think like ad hoc charging is, as Jacob mentioned, ad hoc charging is important, right? So you want the customers to being able to drive to a charging station and just pay for it. When it comes to the price transparency, the German market is just a very difficult market, and I'm not in this area, right? So I'm just from a very objective perspective, it's a very complicated market, and we have the tendency to make, as Germans, as you know, we have the tendency to make things more complicated than we should, right? So, and one of the most complex markets is the energy market in Germany, and that is something that we definitely have to work on, also in terms of grid fees, that are not or are very, very high, much higher than many other markets. So yes. Would I love to have super low ad hoc prices and a great price transparency? Definitely a yes. Will we get there? I hope so. But again, right, so ad hoc charging will be, that would also be my perspective, always more expensive than subscription models that really have a right to play as well.
Yeah. Any more questions from the audience? Otherwise, I also have another one that is related to the fact that the electricity sector, which you're all integrating into, is highly relevant and has to be secured. So the question is, how do you deal with cybersecurity threats? It just came in. I'm just going to read it out because it's a lot more detailed. How do we ensure the sector is effectively secured from cybersecurity threats in a world where greater security adversity and critical infrastructure in a world with greater security and adversity and critical infrastructure?
I have no clue.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's a little boring answer, right? You have to follow that. There are standards in place, right?
Yeah.
How you have to do to enable us to be cyber secure.
It's for none of you, it's the next big thing on the roadmap.
Yeah, I think it's a super important thing, right? It's very, very important, and of course here we're coming back to the cost perspective. Of course, that is something where I would say, I would like to ignore it, but I cannot, right? So we have, we are mandated to provide an uptime of coming to 100%, right? That is, of course, always the level you want to reach. And our customers expect, especially in the energy field, that everything is running smoothly. And cybersecurity is of so much relevance that we're actually putting a lot of resources into this area, right? And we put a huge emphasis on we have to make sure that our systems are running constantly, are secure and safe, right? Because that is exactly what our customers expect from us. And running into a direction where we're having EV only at some point, right? That is our end goal, obviously. It becomes even more relevant.
Yeah.
So it is critical. And everyone should put the right emphasis on cybersecurity. It's not a fancy topic, right? No one likes to deal with it. At least I don't. But I have to, and we need to. So
we put it on the agenda for next year with some
Definitely.
with some experts. So we are right at the end of this panel. Unless there are any more questions, last chance to raise your hand. Then. Thank you very much, guys. It was a great discussion, and I'm looking forward to setting up the flexibility panel for next year.
Cool.
thanks, Johanna.
Thank you.
Thank you.